national anthem. And for this, we have the choral group of the UP College of Law, UP Law Charivari. Can we all stand up, please? The topic will be Peace, Demilitarization, and Violence Against Women. May we call on the speakers to come up and occupy the seats on stage. If Adele Kagarabi, Lisa Gonzalez, Ida Subaida, Itam Khatib, and Attorney Belinia Suarez Villa. I will be introducing the speakers, so the sequence will follow the way I have introduced them. Is Adele here? Adele? The first speaker will be Adele Kagarabi of COFAS. He is the president of the Provincial Commission Against Sexual Violence in South Kivu, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Danilo Concepcion, and the message is to be read by Attorney Professor Rowella Garson.
Danilo Concepcion, I would like to read this short message for today's forum. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a pleasant afternoon. I would like to thank the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women Asia Pacific, the World March for Women, and the Institute for the Administration of Justice of the University of the Philippines Law Center, our honored resource persons, and everyone else who are present and who have made this forum possible. Section 13, Article 2 of the Philippine Constitution provides that the state shall ensure fundamental equality before the law of men and women. However, the sad reality is that women continue to be denied this equality enshrined in the Philippine Constitution and UN conventions, and deprived of their rights under both the Constitution and laws. That is where public forums such as this come into the picture. There are several laws that lay down women's rights and promote their protection, but we should not stop our efforts at that point. After all, what good is the letter of the law if it is neither recognized nor enforced? The initial aim of these events is to create awareness of the rights of women. Hopefully, awareness will foster vigilance, which would eventually lead to the ultimate goal of full recognition, enjoyment, and enforcement of women's human rights. Society will never progress if half of its members are denied their human rights. We hope that this forum in the University of the Philippines Law Center has somewhat contributed to correcting this inequality. Good afternoon.
So for our first speaker, we have Adele Kagarabi of the Democratic Republic of Congo. As I was saying, Kagarabi is the president of the Provincial Commission Against Sexual Violence in South Kivu, Democratic Republic of Congo. Kagarabi organized the third international action of the World March of Women in Bukavu to focus attention on women's peace building, community security, and freedom from violence, emphasizing the role of economic interests that influence the conflict in the South Kivu region, where the systematic rape of women is used as a weapon of war. The second speaker will be Liza Gonzalez of the Bagong Kamalayan Collective Incorporated, member of the World March of Women, Philippines. Gonzalez is a survivor of prostitution and has been actively advocating for women's rights since 2003. She was among the pioneering members of the BKCI, a mass organization of survivors of street prostitution and sex trafficking that conducts human rights education, peer counseling, and organizing among survivors in Metro Manila. She is currently her group's policy advocacy officer and has spoken in various international and local fora with the youth, social workers, human rights advocates, and government authorities. She was also a member of the committee that drafted sections of the Anti-Trafficking Act of 2008 on social services due to victims of sex trafficking. The third speaker will be Ida Subadia of the Indonesian Peasant Union and a member of the Lavia community. Subaida is a farmer from Tagaga village, Asahan district, North Sumatra. She has been a member of the North Sumatra Indonesian Peasant Union since 1998. As a member of SPI, she is very active in the work of reclaiming land and in the farmers' cooperatives. Since 2010, she is trusted to be one of the Farmers' National Assembly of SPI. She is also very active in the struggle for peasant women's access to land and other agrarian resources and increasing the involvement of women peasants in organizations. SPI, which is the Indonesian Peasant Union, since 2004, has been the International Operating Secretariat for Via Campesina. The fourth speaker is Hitam Khatib, Union of Palestinian Women Committee. The Union of Palestinian Women Committee Society was founded in the year 1980 with the purpose of empowering Palestinian women at all levels and to contribute in their Palestinian national struggle against the Israeli military occupation of the Palestinian territories. The Union is a mass-based organization and an indivisible part of the Palestinian women's movement, in particular, and the national movement in general. UPWC strives to build a civil, democratic, progressive community free of all forms of discrimination and respect women's rights as part of human rights in general. UPWC struggles to empower Palestinian women and develop their circumstances to achieve real equity between men and women, as well as equity among all social classes. The last speaker is Attorney Virginia Suarez Pindac, President of KSACA, member of the World March of Women, Filipinas. Suarez Pindac a labor and human rights lawyer, is the national president of ESATA, an acronym for the Filipino equivalent of Unity of Women for Freedom, a national federation and political center of women from various sectors, peasants, workers, students, urban poor, and indigenous people, with presence in different regions and provinces throughout the country. One of its main campaigns is for the abrogation of the Visiting Forces Agreement and the Mutual Defense Treaty with the U.S. It also takes up violence against women and children and the issue of growing number of women in dirty, difficult, damaging, and degrading precarious jobs and the feminization of migration. Suarez Pinak is also the spokesperson of the Citizens Peace Watch and of the Philippine Movement for Climate Justice. So may we have the first speaker, Adele South Cagayan.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à Auguste Assemblée.
Greetings to this illustrious assembly.
Je suis vraiment honoré de me voir devant vous pour expliquer un peu, échanger un peu avec vous par rapport à la paix et la démilitarisation.
It is a great honor for me to be here before you today to be able to explain things about my context and to talk about peace and demilitarization in general.
Avant de commencer mon propos, je voudrais un peu que nous puissions un peu essayer de revivre dans nos esprits la situation qui prévaut ces derniers temps dans tous les pays du monde, plus précisément au Moyen-Orient, en Afrique.
Before we get started, before I begin with the main body of my presentation, I would like to talk first about what is happening today around the world, and most particularly in the Middle East and Africa.
Je pense que si nous essayons un peu de voir, de nous imaginer ce qui se passe même maintenant là-bas, nous allons comprendre qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qui, malgré tout ce que nous avons toujours fait, tout ce que nous avons toujours décrié, qui continuent toujours à se dégrader dans le vécu quotidien des peuples.
And I'd like you to try to imagine what is happening in the Middle East and Africa. Because despite all of the very hard work that's happened and all of the denouncements that we have made, the denunciations we've made, the fact remains that living conditions in these areas continue to worsen dramatically each day.
Notre observation, c'est que ces derniers temps, nous assistons à plusieurs mouvements de déplacement, des soulèvements de peuples, des déplacements de familles, parmi lesquels nous avons beaucoup de femmes et d'enfants.
In the recent months, we have seen a wide number of different movements occurring, ranging from uprisings to displacements of families with their children.
Et là, nous pouvons poser des questions. Pourquoi?
And now we would like to ask the question, why?
Je pense que la réponse est que ce sont les conflits qui peuvent se justifier par le patriarcat, l'impérialisme qui veut toujours prendre de la place dans les communautés.
And I think this is because conflicts are often justified on the grounds of patriarchy and capitalistic reasons that have direct effects on families.
On essaie un peu de justifier ces nombreux conflits par des conflits ethniques entre tribus ou groupes dans un pays ou région, alors que ce n'est pas ça. C'est qu'il y a des causes, de véritables causes économiques qui demeurent masquées et que nous devons nous tous, sur lesquels nous devons nous tous apporter notre attention pour savoir comment il faut le contrôler, il faut le combattre.
And quite often these justifications pertain to ethnic conflicts, conflicts between tribes, between different groups, or within a region. But this is a fallacy. The truth of the justification behind these conflicts lies in hidden economic reasons that we must look to and see how we can overcome if we are to resolve these conflicts.
En effet, beaucoup de conflits sont rentables ou, je dirais, de nature économique. Et ces conflits ont été provoqués dans le but de contrôler les ressources naturelles des pays. Il y a le pétrole, par exemple. Il y a en Irak où nous avons le pétrole et où les conflits ne s'arrêtent jamais. Nous avons suivi il n'y a pas longtemps ce qui s'est passé en Libye. On va nous dire d'autres choses, mais nous savons que tout tourne autour des ressources naturelles de ces pays. Il y a par exemple le coltan pour les téléphones portables, il y a l'or, tout ça. Ce sont des convoitises de ces multinationaux qui veulent à tout prix y accéder sans être contraints.
And many conflicts, it must be said, are actually profitable. In other words, there really is an economic interest in them being waged. And the basis for this is quite often natural resources, particularly oil, which we have seen has perpetuated conflicts in many different regions, but also coltan, which is used in mobile telephones, and gold, and many other natural resources, which the multinationals desire so greatly to have that they're willing to do just about anything.
Et en plus de ce contrôle de ressources, il y a aussi des richesses qui est je dirais, les soubassements, n'est-ce pas, de ces richesses, de ces ressources. Et ces richesses promettent beaucoup à la promotion surtout des industries d'armes, et ça entretient la création de milices par-ci par-là, et aussi des industries locales de sécurité.
In addition to these natural resource-based issues, based reasons, there's also the issues of wealth that are underlying the grounds for conflict. Quite often it's to promote the arms industry or to facilitate local security companies.
Il y a des conflits partout dans le monde. Et ce n'est pas seulement les quelques pays que je viens de citer, mais il y en a autant. Presque tous les pays du monde, surtout les pays du tiers-monde, sont la cible, je dirais, de ces multinationaux.
It must be said that conflicts exist all over the world, not just in the areas that I have mentioned, but no country is truly free from them, and this is especially true in the third world.
Peut-être, on peut peut-être les ignorer tout simplement parce que il y a certains de ces conflits qui sont fortement médiatisés. Et, par exemple, le conflit en Afghanistan, en Colombie, au Darfour, dans la région du Grand Lac. Mais il y a d'autres qui, jusqu'aujourd'hui, on n'en parle même pas, alors qu'il y en a.
And some of them you might not even have heard about, because while some conflicts receive a great deal of media attention, such as in Afghanistan, in Colombia, in Darfur, and in the African Great Lakes region, but others we hear virtually nothing about.
Parmi les pays peut-être qui souffrent de ces conflits, qui restent dans l'oubliette, nous avons la République centrafricaine, le Tchad, nous avons le Pays Basque et autant d'autres.
Amongst these different countries that we don't hear about ever are the Central African Republic, Chad, and the Basque Country, amongst others.
Je pense que nous devons beaucoup plus tenir compte des pays qui sont impliqués à distance dans ces conflits par intérêt commercial et par la vente d'armes.
I think we need to take account now of countries that are involved in these conflicts from afar, whether for commercial reasons or for the sale of arms.
Parce que nous ne devons pas traiter sur les conséquences, mais nous devons essayer un peu de trouver la cause et de cibler les origines de tous ces conflits.
What we need to do is not focus on the symptoms, but on the root cause of the illness that is these conflicts.
Vous connaissez que la guerre, le conflit et la militarisation sont des expressions de la violence qui sont devenues de la violence devenue naturelle dans les systèmes patriarcaux et des systèmes aussi capitalistes, ainsi que des moyens mis en œuvre pour ces systèmes pour maintenir leur domination sur le peuple.
As we all know, I think, war, conflict, militarization, these are all different expressions of violence that have now become natural in this patriarchal, capitalistic world. And they are actually tools used to maintain the dominance of these ways of thinking and acting and governing.
En outre, la militarisation, c'est un reflet de la division des rôles du patriarcat. Donc, le concept de masculinité est associé à la violence et aux armes, et ce concept traduit l'idée selon laquelle les femmes ont besoin d'être protégées par les hommes et l'armée.
And militarization is also used to spread ideas about gender roles. For example, like masculinity is linked to violence and to carrying arms, while women are seen as needing protection.
L'institution militaire contribue de façon diverse à former des jeunes hommes de manière à ce qu'ils occupent la place des dominants dans la société, selon la hiérarchie des rapports sociaux des sexes. On peut considérer l'armée comme l'une des organisations les plus patriarcales dans les sociétés et l'une des plus révélatrices des inégalités qui caractérisent les rapports hommes-femmes.
Military institutions are created to train young men to take on a dominant role in society based on a gender-oriented hierarchy. And the military is really one of the most dominating and institutions, and one that really promotes the most inequality between men and women.
Dans les systèmes patriarcaux et capitalistes, les élites économiques agissent auprès de l'État de différentes manières, notamment par le biais des gouvernements à leur service dans le but de conserver le contrôle qu'elles exercent sur les pays et surtout sur les femmes.
Patriarchy and capitalism, by means of economic elites, take action on governments by placing pressure on them. The governments then become in their service, which in turn takes them away from countries and women in particular.
Elles y parviennent soit en augmentant la répression par le renforcement de la police, par l'infiltration et l'adoption de politiques tolérance zéro, qui alimente encore plus la spirale de la violence, soit en criminalisant des personnes vivant dans la pauvreté ou luttant contre ces personnes, comme par exemple les migrants et les mouvements sociaux.
And this pressure tends to increase. On the one hand, this can be in the form of an increased police presence, or by enacting supposed zero-tolerance policies, which only serve to further increase the cycle of violence. Or, on the other end of the scale, they can be used to criminalize the poorest members of society and other more vulnerable people, such as migrants, as well as social movements in general.
Les femmes ont toujours subi psychologiquement, socialement, économiquement et physiquement les affres de la guerre. Malheureusement, leur corps est devenu un champ de bataille pour les soldats.
And women have always suffered psychologically, physically, emotionally, and economically from the ravages of war, in which their bodies are considered by soldiers to be the field of battle.
les femmes et leur corps ont été tour à tour considérés comme un butin, une monnaie d'échange, des repos du guerrier, un champ de bataille, étant identifiés sur le sol ennemi.
Women and their bodies have been alternatingly considered to be loot, to be bartering mechanisms, the right of victorious warriors, or the field of battle on which soldiers are allowed to play.
Malheureusement, pendant toutes ces batailles et ces guerres, le viol a été utilisé soit pour humilier, déshonorer et démoraliser l'ennemi, soit des moyens de propagande militaire, ou soit même un moyen de transmission volontaire des maladies, des infections sexuellement transmissibles et du VIH, ou aussi c'est un moyen pour délibérer des purifications ou de nettoyage seulement d'une ethnie.
Very unfortunately, in all these battles and wars, we see rape used for a number of different reasons. Rape is used to humiliate, to dishonor. It can be used as a form of propaganda to communicate a particular message. It can be used for the intentional propagation of sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV, and it can also be used as a justification of ethnic cleansing.
Les violences sexuelles ont été utilisées aussi comme terreur politique. C'est le cas d'Haïti, par exemple. Ce qui est grave, c'est que les conséquences de cette brutalité ne se limitent pas au plan physique seulement, mais ça se limite aussi par la transmission des maladies sexuellement transmissibles, des grossesses non désirées, et aussi au plan psychologique, il y a la dépression, la perte d'auto-estime de la victime, il y a la culpabilité, etc. Et une femme qui a été violée est souvent mise à l'écart et marginalisée par sa société. Et même son enfant, parce que deux fois les viols ont été suivis de grossesses non désirées, et même l'enfant qui est le fruit de ces viols subit aussi les mêmes sorts que sa mère. La femme est rejetée par son mari et sa famille. Elle porte la faute d'avoir subi une violence extrême. Et pour de nombreuses personnes, par exemple, et les nombreuses femmes, leur seul ici possible, c'est de garder silence, de ne pas parler pour ne pas perdre sa valeur, pour ne pas perdre son honneur, ou de fois même refuser qu'elle a été violée. Et dans l'entretemps, elle continue à souffrir et jusqu'à même à perdre sa vie. Et dans les conflits armés, le nombre de violences civiles est beaucoup plus important que celui des victimes militaires. Là, il s'agit majoritairement des femmes et des enfants. Nous avons aussi la prostitution dans l'entourage des bases militaires ou des campements militaires qui augmente systématiquement lors des conflits armés avec la réglementation des maisons de prostitution. Les femmes doivent s'occuper des tâches de la vie quotidienne des enfants, de la quête et la préparation de la nourriture. En temps de conflit, ces tâches deviennent très difficiles et très risquées, car en plus de ça, elle doit encore prendre en charge les blessés dans la famille parce que le mari a été emporté ou a été tué ou a fui. La femme se retrouve seule à s'occuper des personnes âgées et des malades toute seule. Malheureusement, quand le mari revient, deux fois, cette femme, elle est encore une fois répudiée, tout simplement parce qu'elle avait été violée. Et nous avons toujours constaté, observé que les taux de déplacement forcés et l'exode, le plus grand nombre de déplacés, ce sont les femmes et les enfants. Dans le quotidien des femmes, sur les conflits armés, nous voyons qu'il y a beaucoup de choses vraiment sur lesquelles nous devons réfléchir, surtout le nombre d'armes qui est en circulation et qui augmente dramatiquement. Des fois, les femmes sont obligées d'en porter pour se protéger, ce qui renforce la culture de la violence et de la force. Les violences domestiques augmentent pendant les conflits armés et après ceci, quand les maris reviennent, la femme continue à souffrir davantage. Il y a l'intégrisme qui augmente aussi pendant les guerres et entraîne une fragilisation croissante de la situation de la femme. Le budget militaire dévore les finances publiques et il n'y a plus d'investissement dans le pays. Tous les services publics, la santé par exemple, l'éducation, la sécurité des revenus, le logement, la protection de l'environnement ne sont plus pris en compte, alors que ce sont les services dont les femmes ont besoin pour elles et leur famille en tant qu'utilisatrices et femmes travailleuses. Donc, nous comprenons qu'il y a beaucoup de choses que la militarisation nous apporte, sur lesquelles nous devons vraiment réfléchir. Et pour cela, nous devons nous dire qu'il est grand temps de continuer notre édite. Et nous continuons à demander qu'il y ait la réduction des dépenses militaires et la réduction aussi du budget public, qui est destiné à l'achat d'armes, à l'installation aussi des bases militaires et au maintien des armées et leurs infrastructures, la fin des incitatifs à la fabrication et commerce des armes. Nous insistons beaucoup pour que la fin immédiate des accords de base militaire soit effective. Nous demandons que le retrait des armes militaires étrangères dans les pays et dans les pays dans lesquels les conflits sont terminés, où les accords militaires ont expiré, que ça soit vraiment notre souci. Et nous demandons et insistons beaucoup sur la fin de la criminalisation des manifestations et des mouvements sociaux, des idéologies et de la pauvreté et l'immigration qui est fondée sur la manipulation idéologique de la lutte contre le terrorisme en faveur de la sécurité nationale et qui a pour but de légitimer la guerre et le progrès de propre terreur comme un moyen de contrôle des femmes. Nous demandons qu'il y ait la punition des auteurs de la violence faite aux femmes dans la situation de conflit. On tient compte vraiment des armées, des forces paramilitaires, des casques bleus de l'ONU, ainsi que des maris et des parents qui influencent même et qui sont aussi complices de ces conflits. Nous avons beaucoup à nous dire par rapport à la militarisation, mais vu que nous avons eu le problème de transmission nous avons eu le problème des traditions, alors ça nous a pris tout notre temps et on nous dit que le temps est terminé. Nous n'avons qu'à vous dire que nous devons mener notre lutte ensemble et que seule la participation des femmes dans le processus de prévention et de gestion des conflits, ainsi que dans le processus de maintien de la paix et construction, est un atout pour la construction de la paix. Nous continuons à dénoncer surtout les rôles des États et des entreprises transnationales qui tirent profit économiquement du conflit. Ces entreprises qui contrôlent les ressources naturelles, le pétrole, l'eau, les minéraux, etc. Nous demandons que soit réalisé un processus d'éducation populaire pour préparer les femmes à discuter des sujets tels que les accords militaires, les ressources naturelles des pays, les causes économiques et politiques des conflits, la participation des pays qui soutiennent ou qui produisent des guerres et l'industrie de l'armement afin qu'elle contribue à dénoncer les violences sexuelles et d'autres formes de violence ayant lieu dans les zones de conflit. Nous devons ensemble réfléchir comment organiser beaucoup d'événements et d'autres activités qui permettront à la marche mondiale des femmes de jouer son rôle de réseau d'alerte capable d'approfondir la réflexion et de motiver une action immédiate de soutien aux acteurs engagés dans ces conflits. C'est sur ce mot que je dis et je vous remercie.
Rape and sexual violence used for political reasons occurs in many countries, as I mentioned, including Haiti, most recently. This brutality is not only physical, but it also involves the transmission often of sexually transmitted diseases, unwanted pregnancies, psychological problems such as depression, loss of self-esteem, feelings of guilt, and marginalization. And even the children of rape end up suffering from the same fate and the same stigmatization. These women are often rejected by their husbands because the violence that they suffered is considered to be their fault. And for many of them, it's easiest just to keep their silence so that they won't lose their sense of value, lose their honor, and they may even deny their rape while still continuing to suffer from its effects. There are many more civilian victims and military victims of these conflicts, as we all know, and these are primarily children and women. Prostitution tends to develop around military bases, particularly in times of conflict, with the institution of legalized brothels. Women, at the same time, during conflicts, are forced to take care of their home, their children, and food, which they normally do, but in this case it's so much harder and it even becomes riskier in cases of war. They must also look after injured people during the war because their husband is out of the home for whatever reason, if they're fighting, dead, or they've simply fled. They also need to take care of the elderly while their husbands are gone. Unfortunately, when their husband finally returns, he will still reject his wife if she was raped. Most of those who are displaced in situations of conflict are women and children. And in cases of armed conflict, what we need to keep in mind is that the number of arms that are around and available in circulation are on the rise, and sometimes even women are forced to take up arms. Domestic violence also increases, and women continue to suffer even more as a result of this after their husbands return from war. In short, the situation of women continues to deteriorate in times of conflict. Because of the conflict, states stop investing in social security measures like health, housing, education, and so on, which is precisely what women need first and foremost. We can all see that militarization causes a great deal of pain and suffering. For our work, what we need to do is continue to work together to decrease military expenditures, to stop the use of funds for public services to buy arms, and stop the encouragement of different companies to manufacture and sell arms. We must work to have military bases withdrawn from countries, and for foreign troops to be also withdrawn from countries once they're in their post-conflict phase. In particular, the criminalization of social and other movements that work on many different issues must stop. For example, particularly with regard to immigration, which is often targeted because of the issue of terrorism, cited as a reason of national security, and so on, and all of this as a way to control women. What we also need to do is punish rapists and other sexual violators during times of conflict, whether they be armies, members of UN peacekeeping forces, or the husbands and families that condone these practices. There's a lot to say about militarization, but because we're limited in time with having to do this consecutive interpreting, we'll bring to a close. Basically, what I want to say to you all today is we need to continue to fight together. We need women's active participation in the peace building and peace management process. We need to continue to denounce states and multinationals that profit from conflicts, and to work to develop popular education so that women and others can become more aware of military issues, natural resources, the political and economic causes of conflict, issues around the arms industry. And this will also allow us at the World March of Women to continue to develop new events and activities to mobilize around these issues. Thank you.
simulan ko yung aking speech sa kwento ng aking buhay. Sa edad na 10 taon, nung una akong makaranas ng abuso. Sa murang edad, hindi ko alam na abuso na pala ang nangyayari sa akin. Dahil hindi ako sinaktan o tinakot, at sinabi lang sa akin na mahal kita, kaya ako ginagawa ito sa iyo.
I will start my speech with my own experience. At an early age of 10, I experienced abuse. And I did not know that what was happening to me was abuse. Because I was not physically hurt or harmed. Because I was always told while I was being abused that I was being loved.
Sa panahong iyon, malakas ang pakiramdam ko na may mali na ginagawa sa aking katawan. Dumating ang panahon na nakita ako ng tiyahin ko habang inaabuso ako at pinagalitan ako at sinabihan akong malandi daw ako at ginusto ko raw ito. Lalo akong nalito sa sinabi ng tiyahin ko.
I have a strong feeling that there is something wrong with what is happening to my body. And then the time came that my aunt saw what was being done to me, the abuse that was being done to me, and I was scolded, and I was even told of her, and was told that I liked what was being done to me, so I was confused.
Umalis ako sa aming bayan upang takasan ang bangungot ng aking karanasan. Pumasok ako bilang isang kasambahay, ngunit sadya yatang mapagbiro at tadhana, muli akong inabuso ng aking amo.
I left my hometown to escape the nightmare that I was experiencing. And I left, and I entered work as a domestic worker. But maybe fate was really not kind to me. And I was also abused by my amo.
Inalok ako ng aking kapwa kasambahay na sumama sa kanya. Maganda ang sweldo, maganda ang kita. Sales lady ang sinabi niya. Ako ay naakit sa sinabi niya. Sumama ako sa kanya upang maging sales lady.
I was offered by another domestic worker of a job and was promised high salary as a sales lady.
Hindi ko alam nung panahon na dinala niya ako sa prostitution na pala ako napunta. Wala na akong choice, kundi sumama na lang sa prostitution. Lahat ng abuso na ay naranasan ko mula sa physical, sexual, emotional. Naranasan kong makulong noong panahon na wala pa akong anak, pipiliin kong makulong. Ngunit nung nagkaroon ako ng anak, mas gusto kong abusuhin na lang ako ng pulis. Kaysa sa mawalan ako ng anak, dahil marami sa amin ang nawalan ng anak dahil sa bagay.
So I went with her, and I did not know that it was prostitution. I did not have a choice. Because everything that I was experiencing before, I did not have a choice, and I experienced in prostitution all kinds of abuse, from physical, sexual, and emotional. And I also had experience in jail because of the law of vagrancy. I was given an option by the police if I should go to jail or I will be sexually abused. And I did not have a child. I chose to leave the jail in exchange of being abused. But now that I have a child, I refuse to stay in jail because if I stay in jail, I will lose my child as many times have lost our child.
Noong panahon na nasa prostitution ako, ay lulong ako sa droga dahil hindi ko kaya makipag-sex sa iba't ibang lalaki. Dumating ako sa puntong sinabi ko sa sarili ko, walang pagkakaiba na inaabos ako ng twin ko, pinsan ko, tatay ko. Kaya, ng tatay tatay ko, dito magkapera pa ako, pagkakitaan ko na lang. Pareho lang din naman yun yung ginagawa sa akin ng child ko at yung nangyayari sa prostitution. Pera lang ang pagkakaisa.
When I was in prostitution, I was very much into drugs because I cannot tolerate having sex with different people. The time came when I said to myself, what happens to me in prostitution is not different from what is being done to me by my uncle, by my cousin, and even my own father. The only difference is that in prostitution, I was being treated by my own for abuse.
Noong panahon na binubuo namin ang aming organisasyon, ay hindi madali sa amin ang aming pinagdaanan kasi wala akong bahay, wala akong gamit, wala man lamang akong dalang. Ang dala ko lamang ay ang kaunting gamit, anak ko, at bawal ko ang determinasyon na kailangan kong makalabas mula sa prostitution.
At the time when we were only starting with our organization, what we were experiencing was not easy because we did not have our own house or a shelter. I just have a few things to myself and a few clothes for myself and also my child. I only have my determination that I needed to be able to move the process.
Mula sa isang biktima, kami ay nagkaroon ng tapang, talino, determinasyon na kailangan namin ipaglaban ang aming karapatan dahil sa matagal na panahon, lagi na lamang kaming inaapi at itinuturing na basura ng lipunan.
From being a victim, we became more courageous, more intelligent, and more determined that we have to fight for our rights because for a long time, we are being oppressed and being considered as a scum of society.
Sa ngayon, kaming mga survivor ay patuloy na lumalaban upang wakasan ang kapitalismong nakikinabang sa prostitution dahil hanggat patuloy na nangyayari ang sistema kapitalismo at kumikita, dito ay hindi mawawakasan ang karahasan sa kababayan bagkus lalo lamang kaming nasasadlang sa prostitution.
Right now, we survivors continue to fight to end the capitalism that benefits from prostitution. Because as long as the system of prostitution, as long as the system of capitalism profits on our bodies, the violence against women will not end. Instead, many women will continue to be brought to prostitution.
Ang aming mga mapapait at masasakit na karanasan ay aming itinuturing kalakasan tungo sa pakikipaglaban para sa kalayaan. Sa ngayon ay patuloy kaming nag-oorganisa upang magpalakas, magpatibay upang mas maisatinig namin ang masidhi naming pagtutol sa pagpapaligalisa ng prostitusyon at kailanman ay hindi pwedeng tawaging trabaho ang prostitusyon.
Our bitter and painful experiences now serve as a foundation towards our fight for freedom. Right now, we continue to organize to strengthen ourselves and to fortify ourselves so that we can voice out our strong opposition to the legalization of prostitution, because there is no time that we can call, there is no moment that we can call prostitution as well.
Dahil ito ay paglabag sa aming karapatan at pang-aabuso sa aming katawan.
Because it is a violation of our rights and abuse of our bodies as women.
Itututulan din namin na kami ay tawaging sex workers, bagkos mas nararapat na kaming tawaging prostituted women dahil ipinapahayag nito may nabiktima sa amin.
We also oppose the term that's being referred to us as sex workers. Instead, we would rather think able to prosecute the women because this clearly explains that there are actors who victimize us.
Higit sa lahat, hindi namin maaabot ang aming rurok ng tagumpay kung hindi kami ang aming tagumpay at hindi ako makakahanap sa inyo kung hindi dahil sa tulong ng kapwa ko survivor at sa ATW.
First of all, we will not be able, we wouldn't have reached the zenith of our victory, and I wouldn't have been able to face you without the help of my sister survivors and
Higit lalo kaming nagpapasalamat sa aming pinakamahusay na mentor na si Ma'am Jean dahil hindi kami iniwan sa aming laban. Kami ay tinulungan niya at hindi kami itinaboy. Bagkus niyakap niya ang aming karanasan at niyakap niya kami bilang isang tao.
Most of all, we would want to thank our very good and very lots of adjectives for Jean and Agnes. Dahil sa kanya at sa aking mga kasamahan, ay hindi ako natatakot o mahiya na ikwento sa inyo ang aking karanasan upang kapulutan ng aral, maging inspirasyon at kanilang kalakasan sa pagharap sa buhay at higit sa lahat upang maipaalam at maiparamdam sa kapwa ko biktima at survivor na may buhay pa pagkatapos ng pagiging biktima at pagiging isang prostitute women. Because of her and my sisters, I am now not afraid and ashamed to tell the people of what I have experienced so that we can gain insights and inspiration and also strength in forging forward. Most of all, it is very important for me to let others know and let others feel how victim survivors like me can have another life after prostitution.
Thank you.
Terima kasih, selamat sore dan salam sejahtera bagi kita semua.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity.
Saya dari Latvia Kampesina ingin menyampaikan suatu makalah yang mengakhiri kekerasan perempuan di pedesaan.
I'm speaking as Latvia Campesina Indonesia, Indonesian Peasants Union, and I will present about the end violations against rural women.
Sebagai sebuah gerakan petani nasional yang bertujuan untuk mewujudkan kedaulatan pangan dan pembaruan agraria untuk melawan neoliberalisme dan menghentikan dan serta membangun atas dasar solidaritas dan kesadaran antara produsen pertanian skala kecil dan menengah dari negara utara dan selatan.
As an organizations that work based on to establish agrarian reform and food sovereignty and is built based on solidarity among North and South country.
Perempuan memainkan peranan penting bagi kerja-kerja Latvia Campesina. Menurut FAO, perempuan memproduksi 70% pangan yang ada di dunia. Tetapi mereka tidak pernah dihargai sebagai petani perempuan yang menghasilkan pangan di dunia.
Women plays an important role in the peasants' organizations. According to FAO, 70% of the food produced in the world is produced by women.
Gerakan ini bekerja sama dan bersama-sama bekerja untuk mensetarakan gender bagi semua level dan berjuang melawan segala bentuk kekerasan terhadap perempuan.
But what we see is, in the rural area, we often see there is no gender equality. Women's work is often being ignored.
Sekarang ini, banyak kekerasan-kekerasan terhadap perempuan melalui metode-metode baru yang itu tidak secara langsung dilakukan oleh pihak-pihak yang terkait.
We see now violence against women in rural area has taken new form.
Contohnya, ketika perusahaan-perusahaan transnasional untuk ekspansi membuka perkebunan monokultur, sehingga keluarga-keluarga petani tidak lagi bisa menghasilkan pangan bagi dirinya dan pangan bagi keluarganya.
When transnational companies come up to the rural area to expand monoculture plantations, family farmers are being expropriated from their land. Women, especially who is responsible to produce food for the family, is kept in a very heavy burden.
Ini menyebabkan perempuan seringkali bertransmigrasi, bekerja di sektor informal tanpa ada jaminan sosial bagi dirinya dan keluarganya untuk bisa mencukupi kebutuhan keluarganya.
The situation often forces women to migrate outside their village or to other countries and work as informal workers with no social security and in a very exploited condition.
Perkebunan berskala besar pertama membangun ketidakadilan terhadap perempuan dan selalu menghadirkan militer merusak lingkungan dan mendorong ketidakkerasan terhadap perempuan.
Big plantation often supported by the military to open up land like in Indonesia, and it creates violence against women in rural areas.
Perempuan kini merespon krisis agraria dan menyuarakan suara-suara petani perempuan dalam kerja-kerja Lavia Campesina untuk menyuarakan anti kekerasan terhadap perempuan.
To respond to this agricultural crisis and to speak about the situations of the violence against rural women, Via Campesina has launched a campaign against violence against women in rural areas.
Via Campesina menyuarakan anti kekerasan terhadap perempuan pada tahun 2008. Kampanye ini bertujuan untuk kemajuan perempuan dalam mewujudkan model pertanian yang adil bermodalkan ekonomi berbasiskan kedaulatan pangan.
The objective of the campaign is to denounce and confront all forms of violence practiced against rural women in every country and to give visibility to the violence against all women of the working class.
Lavia Campesina juga menyuarakan hak-hak petani perempuan untuk mengutuk kekerasan dan mengutuk segala bentuk kekerasan terhadap petani perempuan.
Also to help rural women recognize their rights and to strengthen and struggle for their rights.
Sejak diluncurkannya pada tahun 2008, berbagai aktivitas petani perempuan seperti aksi, lobby, pelatihan, membangun jaringan telah dilakukan di tingkat dunia.
Since it was launched in 2008, there are many action, lobby, and building networks that have been done to make sure that the objective of the campaign can be met.
Di tingkat regional Asia Tenggara, pendidikan untuk menghentikan kekerasan terhadap perempuan telah dilakukan di Thailand pada tahun 2009, di Malaysia tahun 2011, dan di Indonesia sekarang juga berlaku pada tahun 2011 ini.
We also conduct trainings at regional levels, especially in Southeast Asia, in Thailand in 2009, in Malaysia in 2010, and now in Indonesia in 2011.
Sementara di tingkat internasional juga dilakukan seminar bersama antara La Via Campesina, Marquardt Women, dan MOA di Mozambik pada tahun 2010 untuk membangun aliansi melawan kekerasan terhadap perempuan dan menegakkan kedaulatan pangan, serta dilakukannya pertukaran petani perempuan di berbagai negara antaranya India tahun 2008, Bangladesh tahun 2009, dan Korea Selatan pada tahun 2009 juga.
At the international level, we try to build a network and alliance with our allies. And in Mozambique 2010, we held an international conference with World March of Women and Friends of the Earth on how to build alliance against violence against women and to uphold food sovereignty. And we also conduct exchange for women, for rural women especially, so they could understand the situations in other countries and understand that they're not alone, like in India in 2008, in Bangladesh, and in South Korea.
Tujuan dari kampanye ini, satu, menolak melawan segala bentuk kekerasan terhadap perempuan di seluruh dunia dan menyuarakan bahwa kekerasan terhadap perempuan adalah akibat dari model kekerasan terhadap perempuan.
The training meant to increase the level of consciousness of women to understand the causes of the violence and the way out of it.
Dua, untuk meningkatkan kesadaran terhadap perempuan dan strategi untuk menghapus kekerasan terhadap petani perempuan, pendidikan khusus yang dilakukan agar petani perempuan mengetahui hak-hak mereka dan memperjuangkan hak-hak petani perempuan itu sendiri.
I think that's important is to pressure government to comply with agreements and international treaties and implement public policies to combat all forms of violence against women. To confront the lack of political will by most governments to implement all national and international laws, conventions and treaties related to women's rights.
Tiga, memperkuat perjuangan perempuan untuk emansipasi dan memajukan kesetaraan gender serta meningkatkan emansipasi perempuan dalam mengambil keputusan.
And to give space for women in political arenas so they could make they have involved in political decision making.
4. Untuk menekan pemerintah agar menjalankan kesepakatan internasional dan mengumpulkan emansipasi kebijakan publik untuk memerangi segala bentuk kekerasan terhadap perempuan.
And the final goal is to put an end of all forms of violence against women and to contribute to the construction of a global society that is just and egalitarian.
Untuk mengakhiri segala bentuk kekerasan terhadap perempuan, maka dilakukanlah pendidikan-pendidikan yang bertujuan untuk kemajuan bagi petani perempuan melawan kekerasan terhadap perempuan.
Women should be the one who in the forefront of the struggles to end all the violence against women.
Mungkin ini aja yang bisa kami sampaikan, dan selamat sore dan terima kasih.
This is all I can say for now. Thank you for your attention.
The next speaker is Sachita Ali from Palestine.
Thank you.
It's a great opportunity to be here with you. Thank you for this institution who received us. Thank you for the Philippine women who organized this event. In the beginning, I will talk about the general situation for our people. As Palestinians, we are under occupation and are sacrificing the colonialism from more than 6 decades of this colonialism, who came to Palestine through the Zionist movement, who came and started to settle in our lands and caused our first Nakba in 48, and our women and our people were, half of them transferred to be refugees in the diaspora. The occupation was going on and continued the full occupation of Palestine in 1967 by occupying the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Yes, our struggle as Palestinian women is not divided or separated from our national struggle for liberation and our full national rights, the right of return for our refugees to our own land, the right of self-determination, the right of establishment of our independence, our full independence on Palestine. The case of Palestine shows that the oppression against women is not separated from the whole system of colonialism and capitalism with its different phases. Yes, our situation is still hard. Our women started to struggle for their national rights side by side by our men, and that was gave us a big experience to be empowered, to be more effective for our causes, and also raise the question of our social rights in our society. As the occupation as the first and the massive cause of violence against Palestinian women causes many problems for our women in our society. While they are isolating our people, they are transforming the situation in Palestine towards a full apartheid system through building this apartheid wall all over the West Bank, isolating every city and every village, through isolating Gaza and the Gaza blockade, and isolating Jerusalem. While they are denying all of our rights on our land, they are continuing their harassment and punishments against our people. Every day there is a kind or a sort of confiscated land in many places. Every day there are harassments. Every day they invade or attack our people in our villages and cities. Our women are under this oppression and under this violence. And you know, and as Adair said, when the whole society is under massive crisis, yes, the women who are taking the biggest burden of this situation. Our women are taking the burden of the men, many. Our women, while they are not full empowered, And while they are not full ready, they are taking the responsibility of the families while the husbands are in jail or are overseas or are unemployed. Our women is trying to be mothers, to raise their children safely. But when you see that we can't sometimes secure our children, we feel that we have to struggle more and more for our freedom and our the better future for our children and our families. For example, after the war against Gaza in 2009, the statistics said that 98% of the Palestinian children in Gaza have either social or psychological problems, or the two of them. Yes, it is the situation of people who are with no means of defending. They are under daily attack from the air, by missiles, by rockets, and by many means of oppression. And the women who are used to cultivate or to use their lands, to be in their lands, they are now either isolated, some of them isolated after the beyond the wall, or their land is already confiscated and they are not able to go there and to get their products or to make any activities. These lands, we are not allowed to be there. So our population became concentrated in some areas that they are with low productive resources, and we have to seek for another kind of life, and we also in this time find ourselves facing more and more this occupation towards the real freedom for our people. Yes, we are as Palestinian women who are struggling for decades. Yes, we are asking the question about the role of women in the Palestinian society. And through this debate about our role, our situation, we organized ourselves in the women movement, in our organizations, to be more and more aware of our rights, to be defending our rights, to be asking for more and more equality in the Palestinian society. While we are really know that the whole Palestinian population is struggling for its rights. So, after the first Intifada, which was a big movement against the occupation and a big experience for the Palestinian women who participated in the whole Intifada activities, the answer was that yes, the Palestinian women, they want their human rights in the coming Palestinian society, and they are asking for full equality. Because of that, we have the Palestinian document for the women's rights according to CEDAW, according to the international human rights law, and we are working for it, for the Palestinian leadership. Yes, the leadership, the Palestinian leadership and the PLO accepted this document, but it is a very big distance between the theoretical point of view and the practical work. So we continued asking for more and more changes and reforms in the Palestinian laws, while, yes, we still working in the other issues. As Palestinian women, we also not working on the high level of demands. We also work on the ground. We are trying to empower ourselves with many means. Awareness is a permanent program of our organization. Services. We try to give services for women, especially for women in the villages, in the camps, in the rural area, that they can find time for themselves, services regarding to these women and their children. Economical empowerment is needed for women because we need economical autonomy or independence to be fully equal. Because of that, we have many economical programs based on cooperative basis to empower ourselves in these cooperatives. Also, we are not isolated, and we feel ourselves, and we are aware that we are part of the whole international struggle for women around the world and for people around the world for full freedom, for full food sovereignty, for anti-violence against women. These are our demands, and we are part of the international demands of the women, of the whole people who are struggling for their independence and against the neoliberalism, the colonialism, all means of oppression against people. In Palestine, we have many campaigns regarding our rights, locally as Palestinians, and confronting the occupation. Palestinian women are active in the boycott campaign, the BDS campaign, which means boycott Israel and divestment and sanctions against Israel. The second campaign we are is the Solidarity with Prisoners campaign, and especially the women who are prisoners. All the campaigns, the Stop the War campaign, and different campaigns to strengthen our demands towards full freedom, full independence as part of full free world. Shukran. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am honored to be in front of women activists from different nations and speak about war and militarism in Asia. Women and youth comprise 80% of the most affected during military operations, and Asia now becomes the most dangerous place on earth for the following reasons. Asia now becomes the battleground for 1/3 of the world's major wars, armed conflicts, and almost 17 territorial disputes. It is the largest user of child soldiers and the most militarized in the world. It is the main stage of the US-led global war on terror, and it is the unwilling host of more than 86% of the US Special Operation Forces. Any discussion about militarism must be framed by the imperial ambitions of the US, which are being justified by the global war on terror. The US is a two-faced superpower that glorifies military culture in in the name of freedom, while simultaneously suppressing democracy and violating human rights. And while U.S. condemns violation of human rights of others, it commits mass robbery under philanthropic pretenses. This year, the U.S. passed a record-setting defense budget, which at $700 billion is 3 times the GDP of the Philippines and 6 times larger than the military budget of China. 1/4 of this is enough to feed, clothe, educate, and provide healthcare service to the entire population of the world. U.S. controls 43% of the international trade in arms. U.S. has 3 million strong voluntary conscripted military forces stationed in numberless locations around the world, and the American flag flies over just 662 foreign military sites. In Afghanistan alone, the U.S. flies 85 spy missions daily. The CIA drone strikes are part of its undeclared and intensifying wars in the Philippines, Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistani tribal sites. I'm sorry that it is being translated. And as the U.S. attempts to wash its hands clean of its petroleum-controlled occupations of Afghanistan and Iraq, it is recalibrating from large-scale counterinsurgency operations in Southeast Asia to covert interventions in Asia-Pacific. The U.S. will implement its new war primarily through its metastasizing U.S. Special Operations Command. Essentially, this command, the so-called SOCOM, is a secret military within the U.S. military that maintains at least 660 elite special operations team gathered from Army, Navy, Marine, and Air Force. In November 2011 issue of Foreign Policy magazine, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says that the future of politics will be decided in Asia, and the U.S. primary undertaking over the next 10 years will be to lock in a substantially increased investments in the Asia-Pacific. Clinton pledges, even brags, not to reduce U.S. military spending in Asia and claims that harnessing Asia's growth and dynamism is central to U.S. economic and strategic interests. Asian region is occupied by 1/5 of total U.S. military strength, or 325,000 U.S. troops. U.S. strategies to advance its relationship with current allies, counter China, deter North Korea, expand friendly military-to-military interaction with India. 5 nations in Asia-Pacific, Japan, South Korea, Australia, the Philippines, and Thailand, are aligned with the United States through mutual defense treaties. These treaties make it possible for large-scale unilateral U.S. militarization of supposedly sovereign nations and have kept countries like the Philippines in a state of perpetual war for over half a century. There are 30,000 U.S. soldiers in South Korea and 40,000 U.S. soldiers in Japan. In South Korea, the U.S. is realigning its 87 bases and funneling them into one mega base called Camp Humphreys, which is actually the next Okinawa. And it boasts a casino mall, car dealership, and 18-hole golf course across 3,400 acres of confiscated rice fields. U.S. plans to cement its further domination of the region through increased naval base presence and long-range surveillance activities. U.S. will revamp up intelligence gathering in Japan and has actually disclosed plans to increase ship visits to Philippines. The U.S. has also revealed that it will modernize the Philippine military, particularly the Philippine Navy, which continues to use hand-me-down U.S. warships from World War II. To buffer against frenemy China, the U.S. will enhance existing ties with South Korea, a current partner in its occupation by way of humanitarian aid of Haiti through the much-anticipated Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. It will revamp its relationship with Indonesia and has revived training of Indonesian special forces. Indonesia and the U.S. recently signed a number of bilateral bilateral security alliances and agreements encompassing everything from investment, financing, to educational exchanges. The U.S. will also deploy combat ships to Singapore, which is significant because they will be the first U.S. military vessels to be permanently stationed in the city-state. Finally, the U.S. seeks to expand American military presence in Australia beyond its two pre-existing facilities in Central and Western Australia, and formally announced plans to station U.S. troops in Northern Australia last November 17 during Obama's state visit. And how does the U.S. militarize a given country without throwing the ire of the local populace? By hook and by crook. The U.S. relies on a time-proven formula of brute force combined with psychological warfare, and it involves the deployment of the America's highest-ranking officials, development experts, and inter-agent contingents such as U.S. aid and Peace Corps teams to every country and corner of the Asia-Pacific region. The Peace Corps is a volunteer force under the U.S. executive branch. It is one form of lubrication that the U.S. uses to rape the developing world. In 2002, at the same time that the waves of troops were being deployed to Afghanistan and the Philippines, President Bush issued a directive to double the size of the Peace Corps and conjoin it with development agencies like USAID. Today, there are 9,095 Peace Corps volunteers stationed in 76 nations. Destination countries are assigned by U.S. government, never chosen by the volunteers. Allegedly, Peace Corps' top goal is to assist development of underdeveloped countries, but the truth is, through them, U.S. is settling its sights on many countries' rich natural resources. A 2007 WikiLeaks cable exposes America's covetous gaze on the Philippines. It says that the Philippines may have untapped mineral wealth worth $840 billion and $1 trillion US. And multinational firms are already eyeing Mindanao for possible projects. Sure enough, last November 13, 2011, at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation in Hawaii, the Philippine president announced that the U.S.-based company will start exploring a natural gas field in northern Philippines next year. And so as not to play into the hands of anti-imperialist advocates, the U.S. has saturated the Philippines with numbing agents in the form of Peace Corps do-gooders. To skirt international law and avoid showcasing the limits of its military power to the world, the U.S. military now operates primarily through its most clandestine component, the U.S. Special Operations Command. This creates its own joint task forces, like the Combined Joint Special Operation Task Force here in the Philippines, permanently stationed in Zamboanga City. The Joint Special Operations Command is an almost industrial-scale counter-terrorism killing machine. The joint nature of the operations is meant to bypass national legislation that may forbid unilateral U.S. military engagement in a country. The Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force Philippines conducts missions with the armed forces of the Philippines against groups that the U.S. has identified or designated as terrorist organizations. The U.S. spends $50 million a year on Giuseppe Philippines as part of Operation Enduring Freedom Philippines. Alongside its combat operations, Operation Smiles was launched to baccarat local residents. Operation Smiles was a joint Filipino and American 20-team mission deployed across Basilan that provided health services to over 18,000 Filipino civilians. War makes life a living hell for women, compromises rather than increases our security, and stunts our development in all spheres of life. Afghanistan is one of the worst examples of the cumulative effect of militarism on women's well-being. The U.S. claims to stand for the empowerment of Afghan women, and their liberation is the main selling point for the U.S. military presence in the country. We are left to wonder how the most masculinist bastion of the world can be sincere about gender equality, especially one in which there is a thriving rape culture. Military training glorifies hyper-masculinity and aggression against and dehumanize women. As the U.S. redistributes its conventional forces to other parts of the region and the globe, we assert our voices as exemplary of the 99%. We must seize the momentum of the Occupy Wall Street movement to denounce wars fought to advance the interests of the capitalist class in the West and their puppets in our own countries. We must rip up the United States' blank check to pursue world domination. War on Asia is war on women. United States is certainly not our foe, never a protector. For US, it's all about business, it's all about profit. US has always been an aggressor. As we fight to abolish capitalism, patriarchy too must be abolished. Long live international solidarity.
Thank you to all our speakers. And now we are going to entertain questions that you may have. Please identify yourself and please indicate whom you would like to address your question. We have questions from the floor. Nobody? There's no question at all? All the talks have been very clear. Do I see any hands, any questions? No? Oh, then I think let's give our speakers a big hand of applause. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Can you address it? We have a mic, please.
My name
Do we have a mic?
Thank you very much to all the speakers. My name is Mpinga from Zimbabwe in Africa. I wouldn't want to go home and say that these women haven't done enough. These women have done enough. And it's up to us activists to take this further and translate it into action, especially the summation of all the topics that have been touched on by Virginia. It really shows that if we don't stand up as women, we won't be able to conquer all the wars that are all over the world. And there's only one nation that is domineering all the other nations. Yet when we want to look at it all, they came to Africa and they took all our resources with them and they developed their countries. They came to Asia and now they are coming back again to take the little that we have. So it's high time that we strengthen our international solidarity and as members of the World March of Women, I think when we go back home, these are some of the actions that we really need to take further than Philippines, further than what Jean has organized here, further than what Miriam has done as World March of Women. Thank you very much, women.
Very well said. Your sister from Zambia. Yes, I think from Zimbabwe. My apologies. Thank you very much.
Princess, Kaisaka has a very comprehensive research paper on war and militarism in Asia. Copy is free for all of you. Thank you.
Well, I'm told that we need a 10-minute break for our translators. But probably we can also have a 5 to 10 minute break. So, well, we have been treated with a very rich presentation and of the challenges that face the women's movement all over the world, from all the exposition on militarism and the connection between militarism, patriarchy, and capitalism. All the way from the Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, to Indonesia, to the Philippines, to Palestine. They have shown that militarism is based on economic reasons, commercial reasons, that conflicts continue because of economic motives, and that militarism is so much a part of gender violence that it provokes, and maintains patriarchy and gender violence against all the women. And our call from our sister from Zimbabwe, that we should all unite. And I think we should heed that call, and that is why we have a World March of Women. And we should all support and challenges here. We have another forum after this. So we thank all our speakers who have given us very rich presentations.